us today. You're a real leader in this industry. Your insights and perspectives are well thought of throughout the industry, and we can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Andrew.
Jamie, we wanted to get focus today's discussion on wealth management industry trends, where you see the industry heading these days, as well as shifts in client needs. Since the rise of the independent RIA nearly 30 years ago, how is the model, in your view, how has that model shifted, and where do you see the trends going today?
Well, first, just so that we clear it for the audience, the RIA, maybe our naming convention here is known to us, is a registered investment advisor. It's a peculiar entity, and we'll talk more about that later. But I think broadly, if we look at the big trends, even a 35-year perspective, we are in a really profound shift. The shift is from models that were really formed around product manufacturing and distribution to models now that are formed around really a greater alignment of interest with the client demand, are formed around what I would call a professional service firm model, where the demand is for counseling. That's the main shift.
And how are you defining counseling? When you talk about what does the counseling for families mean, and why is it so important?
Counseling actually, for the greater wealth, where there is greater complexity, implies that there are a full range, really almost a matrix of services that are required to deliver solutions to meet the customized needs of a given household or family.
Sure.
And they range from the core investment management to a whole host of the interdependence of planning for philanthropy, planning for risk management, planning for wealth transfer, broadly financial planning, and others, subsets, are fully integrated in delivering what we now have described as wealth management. Now, to make it even more complicated, I put in an additional vertical that I would call information management. And so the delivery of these solutions requires a whole host of ways in which data, the supporting analysis, is delivered into the hands of a family.
Are these models specific to the U.S.? Are they different? How do you see them, U.S. versus Europe versus Middle East and Asia? And how do you feel families? What do you feel families need?
Well, it's interesting. I think great wealth and complexity largely has the same demands that I just described. Curiously, they're delivered very differently in the regions you described. And that's for lots of reasons. Some of it is history. In the US, much of it is driven by regulatory standards that have been created, that have created these archetypes of firms that deliver these solutions. We can describe them largely in four different types. There is the historic broker-dealer. There is the historic commercial bank. Those are the two main ones, and that's where money was historically. There was a subset of those, which is an independent trust company, and then there is the more recent, you mentioned this registered investment advisor. The rise of the RIA has largely been the one that has had the most profound shift in terms of its greatest rates of growth. Now, differently in EMEA, Euroland, you see a largely private banking model, commercial banks, large global financial institutions, and others that are largely focused on the investment side. And you have the other services delivered by other professional advisors, whether they be chartered accountants, lawyers, and other counselors to families. And then largely Asia is still very much concentrated on the investment management, but isn't that natural when in Asia we generally have Generation 1 wealth,
Sure.
And they haven't come upon much of the intergenerational wealth transfer complications that we have had in either Euroland or America, where there is greater multi-generational wealth, therefore greater complexity.
Where do you see it going?
The first premise that I have is that this complexity across all of these needs has outstripped any one person's ability to carry the dialogue. You start from that premise.
Yeah.
Then you get into a lot of implications. There are business implications at the firm level, primarily for staffing. And that's the biggest driver. To deliver all these solutions under the banner of one firm means you have to have the best people. You have to have the right people, but you have the best people to deliver these solutions.
Sure.
And it implies really a move away from an advisor, one person delivering the solution, I call it a ensemble configuration, where there are teams that the firm is delivering the best solutions to each client, unique to their needs, but the firm is delivering the solutions by teams that are delivering the best thinking of the firm.
And between banks and trust companies and independent RIAs, what model do you feel today is best set up to deliver that set of services to clients?
Well, they all have their benefits and pros and cons. I think the change in compensation in RIA land toward ownership has also increased, I think, the behaviors that by being paid as an owner, then I'm going to be thinking about the best interests of the firm. And on the basis of alignment, serving the client, the RIA and typically the trust company model has a higher degree of alignment, where the agency duty of the advisor is dictated largely by giving you the best solutions that the firm can provide you. And I think that's where demand is flowing, where there's a greater alignment of interest from advisor to client.
I want to shift gears a little bit on that subject, but there's been a tremendous amount of consolidation in the industry lately.
Yeah.
What do you make of it, and who come out on top?
There's a lot of firms that champion their independence, and I believe that is a good thing, but they will remain small if they don't have capital. And so they either have to get into a really intense sales cycle, where the incentives possibly for the firms are to sell, or they might consider the capital needs that they have to find a capital sponsor, an outside source of capital that could help them, in fact, scale and really get to the point where they can grow more in alignment with the client. The current environment, where there is a whole host of possibilities, allows firms to find capital sponsors that want to be in this business, because it is, in fact, a long recurring revenue stream, a dividend-like payment system for them, and a safe and predictable source of income. Hiding behind this notion that I'm independent and don't have any capital is a hollow promise to clients. So I'm in favor of there being some forms of capital that have come into the industry and have encouraged our industry to begin to scale. Just to give you some reference points, in 2000, there were less than 100 RIAs that had $1 billion. There are over 1,000 today that are in that category. There are beginning to emerge mega firms that have, not unlike AlTi, that have nearly 50 billion, 100 billion of underlying assets. That class is beginning to separate and emerge, and most of them have had a capital sponsor.
First of all, I think it's great for the industry. The Ultra High Net Worth Institute has been phenomenal at bringing this together.
I think it's important that we put this in framework for the audience. The promise of the RIA is upon us. We're seeing it actualizing itself. Andrew, it was a cottage industry in the 1990s. I actually don't think anybody foresaw what has happened. It was a bunch of financial planners that did some stuff under a regulatory standard called the 1940 Investment Advisors Act. And today, where the investment management industry combined with financial planning has developed into this wealth management industry is, I don't think anybody could have predicted it. But we're in the first generation of that group of people that started this cottage industry. So we're institutionalizing, we're operationalizing work processes of a cottage industry right now. It's coming of age.
Jamie, always insightful. Thank you for joining us and taking the time. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Andrew. Great to be with you.